us to get together and to discuss, like I probably said in my prayer, our collective endeavors and discuss our most important resources, which in this community are our children and our future, and how we're going to work together collectively to bring forth a bright future for both our community and our children. So it's always my pleasure to meet with you all. We have some new faces at the table, and we have our names in front of us, and I think we are going to do separate introductions. If you feel we need to, I can. No, we're good. I think we see each other out and about in the community, and we've had the dedication of this beautiful school. This was a collective endeavor, and I thought I'd start off with this thought. I remember, because I've been on council, I'm going into my 15th year, and I remember Heritage High School was one of those things that were just right in the forefront of our agenda, because the school needed some more than tender loving care and more than refurbishment. So we appointed together, school board, city council, a special, I'm always going to call it a commission or a committee to study this, and our former mayor, Michael Gillette, headed that up with the former school board member, Al Billingsley, chair at the time. And there were lots of options that, oh, do we refurbish it? Do we take down some of it, keep some of it up? And the consensus was that, no, we need to build a new school. And then we, city council, came back and looked at the prices of a new school, $80 million approximately. And we thought, how in the world will we ever bite that one off in our community and have the other resources that are needed to do all the other endeavors? But I remember we did it. We didn't raise taxes at the time. And I remember, and we'll do a shout out to my council member, Turner Perro, who kept encouraging us, you got to squirrel some money away. We've got to put away $1 million. We've got to put another $1 million away. And I know that was back by Councilmember Helgeson, and I remember H. Carey, who is a former council member, who said, you know what, we need to think about maybe while the price of construction's down, starting this a little later than, sooner than later. And here we are, this beautiful school that collectively we all came together. We had the citizens come out, and they gave us an earful about what was needed in a new building and a new school, and for the optimum education of their children. So we together listened and together came up with a solution. So here we are tonight. I'm very proud to be sitting here and having that opportunity to sit in this beautiful building and to share future endeavors with you all and how we're going to tackle that together. School board, city council, city government, and school leadership. So away we go tonight. I'm going to now turn it over to Michael. Thank you again for being the host with the most here tonight. Thank you for the food and the food that we're having and the drinks.
Awesome. Thank you. You're welcome. And thank you all to members of council and my fellow board members for coming out tonight. I think it's important we all get together and hear progress that the school is making in a new building that's provided by the city that truly was a community effort. And so this is a special time to have this meeting, our first joint city council school board meeting here in the new Heritage High School. I appreciate the background that Mayor Foster gave us that led up to this, and it was a long-term effort, and it took vision and commitment from the community as well as city council and school boards. So thank you. I guess that brings us to the first agenda item. It's the third agenda item, which is the Lynchburg City Schools Comprehensive Plan. Dr. Brabrand.
Good evening, everybody. Is the mic on? Good evening.
Good evening.
It's a real pleasure to be here this evening to have the school board and city council here to hear about our state of the schools and to have conversation about the strategies that we are undertaking to continue to have our schools improve. And I am excited to let you know that the state of the schools is strong, it's improving, and we're headed in the right direction. Before I begin, though, I would like to just acknowledge all of the senior staff that is here. I see Dr. McLean, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Learning and Success, and I know we mentioned Heritage. There's Ben Copeland, our Assistant Superintendent for Operations. I see Jason, our Director for Transportation, Marie, our Director for Personnel. Is that Steve Gasky, our Director for Facilities? And our CFO, Anthony Beckles, Cindy Babb, our Media Liaison, April Bruce, our Director for Testing, Mike Rutter, our Director for School Improvement, Ethel, our Director for Equity Opportunity, David Childress, our Director for IT. So thank all of them for being here and being a part of this. Have I left anybody out? Did I leave anybody out? Wendy Sullivan, is Wendy still here? Thank you, Wendy, for coordinating. She's over here, this food and this entire banquet. Let's give her a round of applause. And I also want to give a shout out to Ms. Chambers, who is here on behalf of City Council, and thank you, Ms. Chambers, for being here. Very much appreciated. I want to give a shout out to the Heritage High School staff and administration, Tim Beatty and his staff turned this library into a place for us to get work done. So speaking of get work done, I want to show you the work that we have been doing. As you know, our goal is every child by name and by need to graduation. And when I first got here, I did not feel we had a strong comprehensive plan to guide the school system that was based on metrics that could be looked at, examined, evaluated, and provided feedback on. I believe we have made substantial improvement in the way we do metrics in the school system and evaluate ourselves. So first, let me share you, our first one is around graduation. As you can see, this past year we saw a 2% increase on our on-time graduation rate. It was flat from the year before, and we saw an increase this year. We got some positive growth with our African American students from 72 to 77%. And you saw some real growth with our economically disadvantaged students who were really in the mid-70s over the last 2 years, and we moved them into the mid-80s. This is still below the state average, and it's not acceptable because our mission is every child by name and by need graduation. The state graduation rate now is around 91%. It went up about 1%. We went up 2%. So with graduation rate, we are outpacing the state in growth. The other thing that I want to share with you in terms of a strategy around graduation rate, with your help and support this year, we opened Empowerment Academy. One of the school districts that looks and feels a lot like us is Roanoke City. And Roanoke City's graduation rate is 4 or 5 points higher than ours. They are particularly noted for having the same graduation rate for white students as it is for African American students. Empowerment Academy, you'll be hearing a presentation from our new director there, Casey Crabb, tonight. You'll be hearing from a parent and from 2 students. You made an investment, you made it possible, and we believe this will be another big part of how we can continue to improve the graduation rate in Lynchburg City Schools. One other thing, though, as you start to look at graduation, we need to go back before 12th grade and say what's going on earlier. So one of our goals is to start looking at 8th graders who have at least 1 high school credit. So this is our percentage of 8th graders with at least 1 high school credit. That gets them momentum, gets their foot in the door for high school. You can see our overall rate was 59%. It was lower for African American students. It was higher than the average rate for our white students. We really have some room to grow. Look at our students with disabilities. We really would like to see them start to get some high school credit earlier on in middle school, where we offer those high school courses like Algebra 1 or Spanish 1 or Earth Science. We're also tracking on the next slide, not just what happens in 8th grade, but 9th grade. 9th grade is that key transition year for kids. Kids can take in Lynchburg City Schools in high school 7 courses. We are tracking how many kids are passing at least 5 of the 7. One reason we have that metric is that's one of the eligibility metrics for sports. You cannot play a Virginia High School League sport without being successful in at least 5 of your 7 classes or having at least 5 credits. So you can see what our numbers are for 9th graders with at least 5 high school credits. The overall number is 80%. You can see here, we're closer to the average with our African American students. We still have some room to grow with our students with disabilities. And why we're focused on that is if you start to fall behind by failing more than 2 classes, really 3 classes in your freshman year, that's when you have to get into catch-up mode. And the issue right now is we have a lot of kids trying to catch up in their credits. That's one of the reasons we created Empowerment Academy, is to help accelerate kids who need to catch up. They're passing many classes, but they're struggling in some others. So we know we've got to start to look at these kids as early as 9th grade and say, what are we going to do for them to help catch them up? If you move on from graduation, I want to talk a little bit about course enrollment. One of the things is the world is not getting less competitive, it's getting more competitive. Our kids are going to have to go out and compete not just in Lynchburg, not just in Central Virginia, but in Virginia, the United States, and really around the world. Companies can get talent anywhere. We want our kids to take the most rigorous program of studies possible in which they can be successful. We don't want to throw kids in to something that's too hard for them, but we want to be sure we're pushing them as much as possible in a course or a set of courses they can be successful in. So this here is the percentage of kids in at least one advanced course. It could be an advanced placement course, an advanced course. We have courses labeled advanced. A dual enrollment course, which is like a college level course with CVCC, where it's taught at our school, but it's a college level course. Early college, which we created now maybe 3 years ago. We have a cohort of about 24 kids through that program, and then our STEM Academy kids. So you can see those numbers are drifting in the right direction. More kids from this past year were in an advanced track, 64%. I'm also happy, even though it's still a gap, that we've reached 50% for our African American kids. We're at, to me, the tipping point. We want the majority of all of our kids in a track where at least one course they're tasting advanced coursework. They don't have to take all AP classes, but something you're strong at, take an advanced course in that, take an AP course in that, take a dual enrollment course. So, of course, in this area, our big room for growth, students with disabilities. Now remember, part of that is students have something that's causing them to impact their academic performance. And you can see their numbers are very low in the advanced coursework. We really like to see that change, and that's really working with our special education teachers to support kids to take that next leap to the next level when possible. We don't.
Randy,
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Do you want us to hold our questions, or at the very end, or about a particular slide?
I'll defer to I defer to the wishes of the board and council. I'll do it either way.
If you have a question, would you prefer to wait to the very end?
I've got a few that, with this, that may help.
Okay.
Because they're going to be on every
With
slide.
this particular slide, or?
With this particular slide and what you just stated a minute ago about the students with disabilities,
Yes.
I'm assuming when you go over to the average, that is a weighted average, or is it just, meaning if you have 3 economically disadvantaged children, that isn't averaged into the 1,000 that are, white or black or from an average? Is it a weighted average?
Dr. Bruce, I know you help pull these together. I think he's asking, are we double or triple counting? We've separated out. This is the specific number of students with disabilities in advanced courses.
Correct. That's
So-
the percentage of students in those particular courses with disabilities that are identified.
Okay, so if you have a very small number, that's not going to impact the average.
Right, it would not impact the
Because
average.
it's going to be weighted, due to the fact that there may be small percentage of those students with disabilities, or a small percentage of white children, or large percentage of any of those. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's a weighted average.
Right, we're just looking at the total number in advanced classes.
Okay.
And if that's, say, 2,000 total, and there's 20 that are students with disabilities, it would be 20 over 2,000.
Okay.
The place, Jeff, where I think that swing is the most, and Dr. Bruce, please tell me if I'm wrong, is other. Others are smallest in of any of these correct?
Actually, other is going to include anything other than the races listed there. So it's going to be your Asian students and 2 or more races and some of those.
Yeah, so maybe actually our Hispanic one then is probably our smallest in number, followed probably by other. Students with disabilities, and I don't know if Mr. Vanderwerker is here tonight. 11%, Dr. McLean, perhaps?
Closer to 12.
Closer to 12% of the student body.
The targets up there that you had, I know you said on the first slide
Yes.
that the graduation, the state average graduation rate is 91%.
Yes, yes, sir.
And our first slide, the target is 86%. Why is our goal below average?
Well, our goal is to keep getting better, and we're trying to set a bar for continuous improvement. I want to be at or above the state average for every single indicator.
That goal, 86%, is for next year. That's not like the ultimate goal, it's just the next step.
It's an annual.
What,
It increases.
right. We're trying to continue to set the bar to get to the next level. And in many cases, we use a term, double safe harbor, which is whatever the fail rate, and this came from No Child Left Behind, but we adapted it here. You take the failure rate, safe harbor was a term, you take the fail rate and you need to increase. If you had a pass rate of 90%, that's awesome, but you still had 10% fail. Under the federal law, safe harbor meant you still needed to do better. You took the failure rate and you did 10% of the failure rate. So if you had a 90% pass rate, the next year your target should be 91%. In Lynchburg, what I talked to Dr. McLean, Dr. Bruce, and all of our leadership about is every indicator, unless there's some reason not to, would be double safe harbor. So everything, our failure rate, if you will, our kids not graduating, our target is at least 20% of the failure rate. Does that make sense? So if I went back to graduation, and I believe graduation, did we set that target at double the failure rate?
I can't think of one that we didn't use the double safe harbor.
Right. I think all of them are done at 20% of the failure rate, or the distance from what all students would be.
In other words, your goal is a 20% reduction of your failure rate every
A 20%
year.
reduction of the failure rate every year.
And then with each of those, there is requirements that you do improve already with regarding the state, right? I thought some of that was like, maybe that's just with the SOLs, where there's a 2% improvement or a 2-point improvement on all the testing.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to SOLs here in a minute. I'm still in the coursework stuff, yes.
Okay.
And I'll show you that.
And one quick question with economic disadvantage, which you look like you're really making some strides in. Does that include the African American, the Caucasian, and the Hispanic that would be classified as economic disadvantage?
All kids across all ethnic groups who are economically disadvantaged are in that group. So we're starting to see some gains on that. We don't just want them in the course. Let me move, is this the next one? Let's go to the next one. We also want to see how they're performing in the course. So this is the percentage of them in at least one advanced course getting at least a C or higher. If they're not getting a C or higher, they're getting a D or F, they're struggling. You can see those numbers across the board are pretty high. They're almost around 90%, but that still means 10% of the kids in those courses are struggling with a D or an F, and we really want to see all kids having success. But that being said, there is some research out there with the right support. Taking a little bit of a harder class can help you build that resilience that you need to go and move on and be ready for college when there's going to be harder classes and the supports aren't going to be in place like they are in a high school environment. But we're tracking not just enrollment, we're tracking performance. Now to the SOLs like you asked about. There is no doubt, just like the other indicators I've shared, the graduation indicator, that we are still below the state average. There's also no doubt In the last 3 years, this is the trend for the math SOL pass rate in Lynchburg City Schools, from 54 to 64 to 68. That is above the pace of the state increase. The state this year increased 1 point in math. We increased 4 points as a division in math. You can see those gains across every single category in math. We're pleased. We know we still have more to do, but very pleased to see that in math. If you go to reading, which is the next slide, you'll also see, again, a 3-year trend of continuous gains from 60 to 69 in the past 3 years. Remember, for all of these subject areas, again, here, we still see gains across the area. Our students with disabilities, a little bit of an uptick. Really, that's the big gap group. And our African American and economically disadvantaged are behind them. The English part is the part that is holding us back from most of our schools not getting full accreditation. And it is also true that that is the case across Virginia. Getting kids stronger at reading and writing is part of the strategy for them to have better success on all of the state assessments. Yes, ma'am.
So at the incremental gains of 2 to 3 or 4%, to get up to where black students are supposed to be at 64%, we're talking how many more years? 4 more years?
Well,
4 years to hit a target, and the target will move.
the target would move, yes.
And then to get up to the performance of white students in some type of equal manner, or not, maybe not equal, but a few points, give or take. We're talking 2-3 points a year, 10 years?
I'd like to believe that we can accelerate these trends. I would like to believe that. And we are doing...
Talking about how to do that?
We are
Is that what
talking... Yes, I will show you how we're responding to the data in a few more slides. And not just show you the data, and then see if there's questions around that. The trends, again, are in the right direction. We know we still have more work to do. If we take the next slide, we're also looking at career... Yes, sir.
Just real quick
Jeff.
to follow up with Renee's on that last slide, if you can. Those targets, where did they come from? Those are just across the division that kind of said this is what we'd like to do, or are those based on something?
I showed you the federal accreditation, the federal rules which are being phased out. The state has targets around the test. Math, science, and social studies are 70% pass rate for a division to be fully accredited, and English needs to be 75. Have I said that right, Dr. McClain?
Yeah, I think to his question, those targets on this one come from the double safe harbor again. That's the one.
Is that your question? Part of the whole change from No Child Left Behind to ESSA is there's going to be one accreditation system. We tried to simplify, there's different rules. We thought this is the cleanest and clearest to show you. Actually, this is the stricter version of improvement. We're not showing you, the state really accreditation gives you additional support for kids that had failed before and then passed the test. Some of that's not in here. The bottom line is we've got trends in the right direction. We need to accelerate the rate of improvement, as Vice Mayor Tweedy was talking about. The next slide is around career tech. We are beginning to want to track that. We think all the focus on SOL tests, there is a place for SOL tests, but that's not what our employers are asking us about. They want to know whether our kids are career ready. And one of the big ways we're doing that is doing career certification tests. And we're starting to want to show you the metric around our pass rate of all the different career certification tests that we have. I could break, and it's a whole other set of slides, which I did not bring tonight, all the different tests we give. Our pass rates on those are going up from 70 to 76%. And we want to see those numbers go higher and higher, of course, as well. We're also tracking something new over the past year, and this is part of around our strategy, Vice Mayor Tweedy and others, about how to get better. We are observing classrooms at a scale far greater than we ever have before in the school system. We had our administrators personally do over, and I see Mr. Rutter, was it over 2,000 observations last year, Mr. Rutter? Like close to about that? And ourselves, Mr. Rutter, myself, and Dr. McLean did, I put it at 200-300 observations last year. Going in, I observed 2 schools today, 4 teachers today, and gave feedback to the principal on what the teacher was doing well and what the teacher could do to do better. And a lot of this as well is tracking student engagement. When I go in, is the student engaged on work aligned to the standard that the SOL discussed? This is our own monitoring procedures. And you can see we tracked it through the quarter last year, and we're going to be tracking it for the school board moving forward every quarter, every year. We believe if kids are more engaged, they should learn better, and if they learn better, then they should perform better. And a lot of it, many of our African-American kids, honestly, have been disengaged in the classroom. We've got to have that engagement, frankly, up in the 80s and 90s, and we'll see 80s and 90s test scores. That's my belief. I want to go to the next slide and also shift from a focus on engagement and achievement that we've been talking about to look a little bit at attendance. We're seeing great gains on reducing truancy in our school system. That's kids with unexcused absences simply not coming to school and not being excused. You can see those gains are across the board. We're also looking, next slide, at kids with excused absences. This is something Virginia is now beginning to attract. Even if your parent excuses it, you're just out a lot during the school year. We're tracking it by students missing fewer than 10 excused days. So you can see our overall number is pretty good across the board, but that's still a good 10% of kids who are missing more than 2 weeks of school. That's a lot. That's a lot. So we still have work to do there. I want to move from attendance to look at behavior. This is tracking the number of students with no behavioral referrals. We can discuss behavior later, and the reality is the kids, we want to be sure, and we've developed a system called PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports, to spend time catching kids doing right and not punishing and celebrating kids when they're doing right, not punishing them when they're doing wrong. That doesn't mean punishment doesn't happen, but the first opportunity is to try to praise on behavior that is correct. We've seen an improvement in the number of students with no behavioral referrals. We do see that there's still disproportionality among groups. This is one of the things that we're working on with the Office of Civil Rights when we signed our voluntary resolution agreement back in 2014. And we're continuing to monitor that. And you can see the next one, we're also tracking the number of students with no out-of-school suspensions. If you're out of school, you're not in front of a teacher, you're not learning. We've done better in that category as well across the board. But we still have work to do. Overall, we still have 10% of our kids who are being suspended at least once, a little over 10, 11%. And that's something we need to work on, alternatives to suspension, which we've begun, and we want to continue to deepen those alternatives. We also know that there's some things that can't always be a test score that count. I think it was Einstein that said everything that counts can't be counted, and everything that can be counted doesn't count. So we're trying to begin to quantify school culture, which we think is an important part, and frankly, it's part of the new requirement of the federal ESSA, every student succeeds at. So here are results from last year at our elementary level. My teacher expects me to be successful, 95%. At elementary, we surveyed 5th grade kids, right? They've been through elementary school almost 6 years. At middle school, we do 7th and 8th graders, and at high school, we surveyed 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, right out there. So here for elementary, 95% of the kids said, my teacher expects me to be successful. 85% say they can ask the teacher about assignments. You can see the lowest score, well, actually the second lowest score was about teachers regularly check my work to see if I understand. Right? The confused kid. There's still kids that feel, hey, if I'm confused, is the teacher checking in with me? Getting that number higher will help us make sure kids aren't leaving class on a regular basis not understanding. If you go to the next slide, we look at middle school kids. You can see 91% say my teachers expect me to be successful. We see lower scores around safety, my teachers care about me, and teachers checking in for the work. The majority of kids say so, but we don't want these kids. These numbers are not satisfactory numbers. They're not. Our kids are telling us that we can do a better job around feeling safe, feeling cared for, and checking in on work they don't understand. And then at our high school, again, there, the highest results were for high expectations for students. And you can see the lowest results. If I don't get it, my teacher works with me until I do. Back there, it's not a majority. All this data I'm sharing with you, I shared in convocation with the entire school system. They know that this is an area that we've got to make continuous improvement on, and we've been focused on professional development both at a division level and at a school level around building relationships with kids. Without a relationship with kids, you're not going to get them to get turned on to the classroom. You're not going to get them engaged. We need warm classrooms with high expectations for kids.
Dr. Bergman, I may have missed this because I was studying the data. Is this the first time that you've done this study, or is there a trend?
I started a survey when I got here. Then, because of the voluntary resolution agreement, we had to create a different survey with 80 questions. We got feedback that that was a horrible survey. It was too many questions, but we were requested and expected to do it. We went back and said, this isn't working. We need a smaller survey that's going to give us the key questions. That's the survey we did this year. This year we plan to give almost an identical survey to this, so we'll be able to start to develop the trend lines.
With that, are you just asking all the students and then whoever responds, or are you
At school, and I know
statistical
Mr.
sampling?
Beatty or Ethel, you can jump in, but the kids actually go down to a lab, or now, because in high school they have the Chromebooks, they have time in school to administer the survey, right, Ethel? There is school time for the kids. So our take rate on this survey is, 90% or higher. But I'm glad that's a good segue, because the next slide is parents. This, we don't get all of the folks that we want. We encourage the survey, but we've started to ask parents, do you feel your teachers respect you? We saw that's at 80%. We'd love that at 100%. Teachers communicate with me about my child's progress. That's too low. We've got to do better in communicating with our parents. And this year we asked every teacher to call before first quarter interims to offer something positive. And each principal was to keep a list to see that the teacher had done that, to make that first positive call of communication at the school. The other staff is willing to listen to parents, 73%. Again, we could do better than this, and we hope to see positive trend lines going forward. So that's the data. There was one more, safety and respect in the school. Those were the parent ones. So let's move on and talk about responding to the data, not just showing the data. And I know you can read, so I don't want to belabor each one, and I want to leave time for interaction. We can go to the next slide, which starts with strategies. Collate Lole is our way. We look at teacher lesson plans and give feedback on those, and then we watch teachers do instruction in classrooms with those lesson plans, and we give feedback. It is a tool, a form that we use going into classrooms on a regular basis. In fact, each administrator in this school division has to do at least 15 observations a month around Collate Lole. They need to see at least 15 teachers and give feedback on how they can continue to get better. This year we have lead instructional coaches at each elementary school. A coach helps a teacher get better. They can observe the teacher and give them feedback on how to continue to get better. We've also implemented the Promise Plan, which we shared last year with you all. That was part, again, of the Office of Civil Rights Voluntary Agreement, where we took a response to that to work on getting more achievement for our traditionally underrepresented kids. We've updated our PAR guides. That's a resource that teachers use to teach, so that the content is better aligned with rigor that's in the SOLs and that what we are looking for in low-lay, cold-lay. So the language is similar. We want to make it as easy as possible for teachers to transition. In some cases, you can't use a worksheet you used 10 years ago when the standard changed and became more rigorous. And we're continuing to expand LCS 1. We have Chromebooks now at 9th through 12th grade, and this year we began introducing it at the middle school and 8th grade, giving kids an opportunity to have that technology-enhanced instruction. We also are doing interventions on the next slide around a K-12 reading strategy. Our reading scores, we know, are still too low. We have language now starting in kindergarten that we're going to share around strategies that kids are going to, they have them in the classrooms, the poster, and teachers are going to use that same language around what the reading strategy is in kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grade. Now we got to stick with it, but the kids have to hear the same strategies around what good reading looks like again and again and again. By the way, we have had, and we're emphasizing even more, writing rubrics at various grade levels in elementary, middle, and high, so that teachers can grade student writing on a writing rubric. That's an area we know. Of course, reading and writing are really connected for cognitive development of kids. So we need kids reading and writing. We have rubrics to help them better improve their writing. More support for small group instruction. We're trying to move teachers. Don't lecture like I'm lecturing to you. You get bored. Put people in small groups and have them work on problems, or work on writing and walk around, or even better, pull a small group of kids struggling and you with 4 or 5 kids work with that small group while everybody else does independent work or station work with a specific task. We're extending learning opportunities and professional development time for teachers. We have more professional development days than we've had before with this new calendar. And of course, as you know, we have the intersessions, the fall and the winter intersession, to give more time for kids to learn. And we've also created a new mentorship program for teachers in the first 3 years where they get a teacher buddy. This is a good way to keep teachers in this system, because the Gallup poll has told us people will stay in schools if they feel they have a best friend at their workplace. They'll stay in any institution or organization if they develop a best friend. If there's no best friend, they're going to move on. And we've got to keep the next generation are millennials who are moving on more than the traditional teacher who says, I'm here and I'm staying 30 years. We're trying to develop, and we have developed a mentorship program. We have mentor teachers.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that one?
Yeah.
Because I flagged that. So that's a recruiting and retention policy as opposed to a teacher effectiveness policy?
I honestly think it's both. It's going to get teachers. I think it's going to help retain teachers because they think there's someone to go to at the school for them. It's also going to help them get up to speed quicker in our division with expectations, how to handle classroom management, how to deal with low-lay, cold-lay. The superintendent's going to observe you. What should you be doing? How do you need to work on your lesson plan? Dr. McClain, anything I should add to that would be helpful? I know Tawana Hancock, one of the people you brought into your organization, has been working on that issue.
I would say a lot of the national literature research says that the steepest learning curve is your first 3 years of teaching, so any way we can collapse that adds a lot of value. And I've seen just anecdotally that I've seen some of our teachers through our low-lay observations, first and second years of teachers sometimes being some of our stronger teachers with how quickly they're picking up some of the pieces. So I think that's a piece of it.
It makes sense, as it's that way in a lot of professions. And I just assumed that teachers came out of came out of school ready to go and having the best
In
best
fact,
information out there. But
a
that's not
whole
necessarily-
side notion, not for tonight, but one of the things that is failing right now in Virginia is our teacher programs. We have wonderful universities that have had wonderful teacher programs, but they are not focused on urban school districts and meeting the needs of urban kids. They're still churning out teachers to teach in middle-class schools, middle-class kids. And we need that development. We're having to do all of the training and lifting instead of it happening at the school level. James Madison is the first school that I understand that now has a master's degree in urban education that it's offering its teachers. The first one just happened.
I'm not surprised.
That's got, you're a graduate there, Dr. Coleman. So we need to see more of that in greater numbers. The next thing, I want to move from academic to behavior, because some of the academic issues where we're not having success are because of student social, emotional challenges that result in behavior that interferes with them being able to be ready to learn. We've begun PBIS training. It's now our 3rd year. In fact, I think LaTanya Brown, our director, would be here tonight. She's actually at a conference in Florida getting best practices from around the country that we can take back here and do even better. We've started responsive classroom and implementation. Our elementary and middle schools have been getting this training on teacher language. How you say something to a kid can affect how that kid responds. Sit down and shut up, or I understand it looks like you need to get up for a moment. Would you like to go over and get a drink of water? Come over here, let's talk about what's going on. So teacher language is key. We revised our discipline and dress code policies. All kids that would be recommended for expulsion, the most serious consequences now go to a disciplinary committee of the school board. So the school board gets to see the most serious cases before we would ever recommend removing a kid for more than 365 days. We've had discipline forums with selected students. We've added additional mental health and behavior supports for students. But I want to give you an honest piece, and I know we've had this debate, but the truth is Lynchburg City Schools was not prepared 4 years ago by any stretch of the imagination to support schools in crisis with behavior. When I got here, we had 1 social worker in a district with over 60% poverty. I'm proud to report to you today we have 5.5. It is still not enough. In fact, the State Board of Education has just put out new standards of quality that would say a social worker for every 1,000 kids for an average school district, for our regular school district. That means we're still really almost 2.5. Am I right? I'm 2.5. I'm a social studies teacher, just checking my math. 2.5 short, and we're above the state average of poverty. So we still have work to do there. When I got here, there were 4 psychologists. Now we have 5. We still have a lot of demand for psychologists because of the need for testing of kids to be done by a professional. And I'll just tell you this, again, partly because this is a public discussion. We need our universities to step up and create degrees to have psychologists. There are none around here. We can't find psychologists in this Central Virginia, and many of them who come out of schools go to other places than here. When I got here, we had no behavioral specialists. Now we have 3 behavioral specialists in our school division that can help work with teachers and administrators to help kids. And in 3 schools, they've used Title I money to create their own behavioral coach that's school-based. The behavior issues are real. They are on the rise in Virginia and in Lynchburg, and we've got to put more support in if we want to see those kids be successful. I also want to show you that we're being proactive around behavior as it comes to attendance. We're doing stronger communication with parents and students regarding attendance expectations and policies. We're reaching out to them sooner. Instead of in the past, we'd reach out to them by the time it was time to take them to court. It's too late then. We need to be reaching out earlier. What's going on? Why is your kid not able to make it to school? We've created attendance as incentives for getting kids to school, assemblies, treats, things that students want to do. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but they've been exciting things that kids would be interested in wanting to do. And we're collaborating more with our truancy staff, our schools, and our judges to get kids on the right track and intervene earlier. Also, I want to talk about interventions around culture, which I told you is an area with the survey that we see we still need to improve on. We've created our professional development with new teachers called Connections 101, focused on relationship building, telling new teachers right out of the gate, this is an important part of what you need to do. The first day is not about the syllabus, it's about building the relationship with the kids, getting to know them getting to know you. We have a poverty simulation that we did for all our employees about 2 or 3 years ago, and then we now do it for all new employees who come in to work in Lynchburg City Schools. We've had lots of professional development. Dr. Brown presented last year to all grade levels. And the interesting thing in there is he came dressed as an urban kid. And before the meeting, he interacted with adults to see how they reacted to him. And then during the meeting, he took off his garb and showed underneath a man with the doctorate robe on. And how you can make judgments just based on how a child presents themselves. Very, very powerful. We have Principal Kafeli, another national speaker on this topic, coming to speak to all high school and middle school teachers on Monday, all elementary teachers on Monday afternoon, and he is coming to the community Monday night at EC Glass, 7 o'clock. I encourage you. We're putting it out. I know, right, Cindy? We've already put it out. We're going to put it out more. We've got a flyer in every teacher's box. We've reminded teachers to put it out. Please come. Very powerful speaker. Speaking's not enough, of course, but it's building awareness and it's repeating the message and building understanding of what we need to do from people who've been doing the work. And finally, professional development with our school counselors, modules that are being done based on the ASCA model, which is a national model around how counselors can do best practices. I want to move on to the next part of culture with professional development. We're doing counselor meetings in community centers. We're taking counselors who need to work with kids out of the school and into the community, to see the community centers, to know what kind of programming is going on there. And we're very excited about all the work that's going on there. We've had professional development on de-escalation strategies by Dr. Starks, who was formerly a professor at Lynchburg College and is a consultant on equity issues, on how to de-escalate. We've had Jonathan Zurer and the Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities do leadership training with our school administrators for the last 2 summers on how to build an inclusive environment and make everyone feel included. In fact, our Teacher of the Year this year said at convocation, and I think it's a powerful sentence, unless you intentionally include, you unintentionally exclude. So being more deliberate as a school system. We're not getting it right every day. I can tell you that already. We're still working to think that through. The mayor and I were just talking about on something, just honestly, was I intentionally included? And we've had this, other people, I'm just looking around, we've had these discussions. Do we even do a good job at our level with one another intentionally including? We've got to take that to the classroom level. We've got to intentionally include students and parents, or we're going to intentionally exclude them. And it's easy to say the sentence, it's hard to do the work. The next part with culture, we're doing Gear Up. We have a grant, a state grant through the federal government with our 9th graders. There really are the class of, what class is it? 2020. So as they started back in middle school and now they're into 9th grade, working on creating a college-going culture. We partnered with the Beacon of Hope to do a lot of that work. It's been wonderful. And in fact, we're doing programs during intercession. Of course, we have the intercession to accelerate, but I know even Beacon of Hope was there doing SAT prep, ACT prep, FAFSA work over the intercession. Stuff that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle of school time. Creating time to do that work. We continue to work on a pedal summer program that has character building, motivational speakers that accelerates kids in reading and math at the elementary and middle school, and accelerates kids in math at the secondary school. And we're continuing to do programs like our TRIO programs, where we're pulling kids and selecting them to have experiences, go to Virginia Tech, learn more about the college experience. And we're pulling kids in academic forums and saying, how can we do better? Finally, on the last slide, I want you to know we need to continue, and we are reaching out to the community. We had community meetings in the past 2 years, and we just did again about access to rigor, making sure we're really challenging all kids, particularly our African American kids, because of those achievement gaps we've already discussed. We had listening tours held in the spring last year around equity issues. We've kept listening tours going this year. We have had ones around resources earlier here at this school. We had a listening tour around really advancing the achievement of African American kids last month at Dunbar. And we have listening tours actually this very week on our school calendar. We're getting input on the school calendar. We've had a 2-year calendar, and now we need to review that calendar for future years. And we've continued to develop input from our equity task force, and we've actually expanded our membership, or renewed our membership, and have some new folks on the panel this year, and are doing great work to help us do better. So I'll be glad to take any additional questions, and I appreciate your continued advocacy for holding us accountable, and your support of wanting to make sure we can be the best school system we can be.
Dr. Brakery and Dr. Coleman, I believe that's a question.
Okay. Yes, sir.
And thank you, Mayor and Mr. Chair. My question is not so much me raising a question at this point, but as I noticed the time, it's 6:43, and this schedule has been nicely put together. And I don't have any questions as a school board member as such, because this is a great opportunity for our distinguished council members to do what they need to do. But I'm a little concerned because I do have some things I want to talk about. And I'm just one person. There's a whole bunch of people around the table. How are we going to be able to do that if we're closing out at 7:50 and all of these things need to happen? And I guess what I'm initially saying, great presentation. There's some things we need to talk about.
Rather than the lecture, like.
I didn't say that was excellent. That's not what I was saying.
Okay, so, Dr. Nellis, do you want to say that we entertain the questions right at the moment that deals with this subject? And Dr. Coleman, are you saying maybe we
I'm going to the wisdom
eliminate
of
something?
no, I'm getting to the wisdom of the leadership, and I'm also saying that the lecture was outstanding. I'm saying that beyond that, there's some things we need to talk about, and I'm not necessarily saying what we're going to be able to talk about.
I guess my comment would be that we finish up the questions here. We're scheduled for a short break. Maybe we could talk amongst ourselves. Mayor Foster, decide what the path forward is.
Or just poll our fellow members here to see if we need to have an extended discussion or questions. Councilmember Perro, I do see you kind of moving over there.
We're here. It takes forever to get us together.
Yeah.
We only do it once a year.
Yes.
Let's work it out.
Let's work it out. Let's see what, yes.
We have
Dr.
this,
Dole.
the agenda was presented. I think if we had wanted to change the agenda or add to the agenda, wouldn't people have asked before this point in time?
Well, perhaps we weren't comfortable asking, or, now we're just waiting for the majority to see how everyone else feels about
Do we
it.
have to be formal about it? Do you want me to make a motion to amend the agenda?
You know,
What are we going to
Let's ask questions.
let's just ask, how about if we just, I agree. Let's ask questions. This is the part we're at now. We may have to do away with the break, folks, and sit in our seats. Councilmember Nelson, do you have let's just get everyone's thoughts and figure,
And if you'd like, if it's possible to help facilitate, can I come over here, and then if there's conversation, be a part versus stand and deliver up here?
so that you look like part of the group and not the lecturer? There you go. Okay, Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I have a number of questions, but I'm going to try to limit them to two, one very specific and one more general. The first is you have provided us with a extensive and excellent summary of academic performance, the issues of behavior, expulsion, truancy, attendance, and so forth. Most of those seem to be tracked and focused on students in middle and high schools. Those are the students that you want to provide a positive outcome before they're out of the mandatory school system. My question, in the margins between 100% and whatever it is, how many of those students who are not complying with academic success, the attendance, behavior, and so forth, are not acute cases, but chronic cases where these manifestations have existed since they entered kindergarten? And I don't know that the Lynchburg School Division has an answer to that question, but I think it's critical in terms of where we place our focus and our resources, because if it's kids that are not making it in 9th and 10th and 12th grade, or not making it in kindergarten, then we need to deal with the problem where the problem starts and not pretend that we can somehow change it at the end of the book instead of the beginning.
My shortest answer, this is on, right? My shortest answer to that is we've done two big initiatives. 2 years ago, we put an instructional assistant in every kindergarten classroom. We heard tremendous response from kindergarten teachers. I got to instruction far sooner with the second pair of hands in the room than I did before. That was a huge move. It was an expensive move, $700,000 as I recall. And Dr. McLean, anybody else can, all these folks know I try to keep stuff in the head. Fact check me if I'm wrong, and I don't mind being corrected, but I think it was about $700,000. The other big move that we made this year, and we used federal Title I dollars to do it, is we put an instructional coach at every elementary school so that we can go in and start to identify and support teachers who are dealing with kids that are coming in with all kinds of struggles and make sure we have the highest quality teaching possible. If you're a new teacher and it takes 3 years to really get up to your game, but you're at Darrington, that kid doesn't have, we don't have 3 years to wait to get those teachers to where they need to be. So we're trying to do all the things we can to, the mentor program, to accelerate impact at the highest level. I do think one of the things that we're in the middle of doing is a new thing called DRA to really get a deeper understanding of the kids' reading ability. Reading comprehension is killing us. The kids that can't read at 3rd grade are struggling the whole way through. We've had a measure that we think has not given us enough data. Teachers right now are in their first year doing it deeply. There's a little bit of honest pushback because it takes a lot of time. You have to assess a kid one-on-one, and but it's a thing between instructional time or getting an assessment of what really is going on with this kid's reading ability, and then that we can do something about it. We don't think we've had as good enough data at the early years. The state has something called PALS, but it overshot. It said, oh, kids are reading great. Nuh-uh. It really didn't get at comprehension, and it didn't match up with how kids were performing on SOLs in 3rd grade.
Dr. Great-Granny, in that same vein, if I could just,
Certainly.
because I'm very big about collectively, we've got to work together. The school system cannot do it by itself. And United Way has taken on this initiative
Yes.
to get every child reading on level by 3rd grade.
Right.
How closely then are you all working together?
Yeah, we worked and got a grant with Humankind and got the United Way grant, and at Hutchinson, where our pre-K kids come, and all of our other pre-K kids that are based at other elementary schools. If those kids aren't, if the teacher believes they are struggling even at a pre-K level with reading, they can be identified, and Humankind has folks who then go into the parent's home, and it's like a growing, do you remember the name, for Jay, up top? You have Growing Great Kids curriculum. It's really helping them build reading foundations with those parents. And it's in the home, it's direct instruction. The truth is, I think we're maybe at 40, 60 families. There's more families than that with kids that need that kind of intervention. We've got to do more in the 0 to 4 which isn't before they get to us, to identify kids that are struggling. Our Hutcherson principal is working to really work with local medical folks and improve child find. Where are the kids who already are having developmental delays at 2 and 3? We can't wait till they're 5 and they're with us. And then 3 years later, oh, you're going to pass this SOL. We've got to get to them earlier. I agree. We put a lot of our resources at elementary in the last 2 years. We're doing more of our data refining at the elementary. We're going to have to do more in community engagement with those that don't have us, including parents, healthcare folks, in those first. The medical community, I think, can be poised to help us in the 0 to 4 age range to really help us get kids. Just like height and weight, to really say your kid's not making the right developmental marks, and how can we begin to intervene then?
Follow up to that. Thank you. And I concede that you can't do it just looking at the schools, the classroom, and our academic communities. I've worked for 45 years as a counselor, as a coach, as a teacher, and as an attorney with families who didn't make it, couldn't make it academically, and couldn't make it in terms of compliance with social appropriate behaviors. And it's a lot more than 40 families in the city of Lynchburg. And all of those families, for the most part, go through our schools. The problem I've found in those 45 years of working with children and families is the problem is a fundamental problem in the family and in the neighborhood, not in the school they attend, and not in the program they attend. It is in where they come from and all that makes up who they are. And until we try to focus on that, which is part of our discussion with poverty, we're going to just be...
That's on the agenda.
Dealing with the fall. This is one short question, but related to that. Some of you may know on the school board that for the last couple of years, if you were recently appointed, one of the questions I've asked is whether or not, you touched on it, whether or not we should require new teachers to have student teaching in an urban school system to deal with behavior. And the answer that I had heard was, that's not necessary. A good teacher can teach anybody. I think I'm hearing the school division now say, yes, there needs to be some component, whether it's a student teaching experience in urban school or some specific program in the college that gives them the ability to deal with the unique factors that are presented by children who come from an urban environment.
I don't want to intentionally exclude a potential great teacher who hasn't had that experience, and some teachers can make the adjustment. But we've got to have a bigger pool of teachers that are prepared for an urban teaching environment to teach all kids. And I think that's still a challenge in our teacher prep programs. And the reality is you can go, well, that's not most kids. The truth is most kids in the classroom of the future are going to have a variety of different backgrounds, and many are going to be economically disadvantaged. I think the percentage of economically disadvantaged students in Virginia, the state, is now at 40%. That's reaching the halfway mark. So we've got to start to think the default is you're going to teach a kid who has some economic disadvantage, whatever background, whatever race they are. So I think we've got to start to do more of that, and we're working as best we can with the higher ed folks, and we're doing our own in-house training to sort of accelerate that.
Okay, and
Thank you, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Because what we're going to try to do here is switch back and forth, council member, and then I know there's a school board member and another council member, so you take it away with your
Just to quickly follow up, I'm glad you mentioned the elementary schools. I think we look at a lot of this data in its broad strokes, but some of our most exciting gains are when you can see it at the elementary level. At a couple of our most challenged schools, Darrington and Perrymont, we're seeing like massive double-digit gains. And so I think the big initiative of putting the extra hands in the kindergarten classrooms, these are things that you're talking about, well, we have to wait 10 years. This is a bullet once it starts rolling, they build. You have kindergartners that are more capable and they go to first grade, and those first graders are exponentially more capable than the ones that came before them, and that builds, and I hope that's the trend line we expect to see. In terms of the growth that we've seen in those two schools in particular, relative to having teachers that have this particular experience dealing with the kids that need a different type of learning environment or urban or most challenged kids, I think we have really capable building leadership. They know the boots on the ground that the classrooms need, and their ability to have these cohesive teams that really know how to make these kids, do everything that they can and everything they're capable of. It's pretty amazing to watch, and some of the best experience. I have two kids, I have a fifth grader and a first grader at Perrymont. They've had really new teachers as their first and second year teachers, and that's some of the best teaching I've ever seen. Their ability to differentiate within the classroom is amazing, and I think that speaks to a lot of the stuff that we put in place in terms of mentorship and just knowing what your kids need, and so lots of exciting things are happening, especially at the elementary level. And we see these big numbers and stuff, but when you really look at it from a micro scale, it's some pretty good stuff. So I'm glad that I'm this on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Helgeson.
Thank you. I noticed on one, I'm kind of looking at a lot of slides collectively. One is I see the revised, and you mentioned one of your initiatives have been to revise some of the discipline policies. And as I look at how do the actual students feel about their schools, from the culture that you had, the 3 slides, and as I see the progression going from elementary schools where they
Yes.
see extremely safe,
Yep.
they see that their teachers care a lot about them, and as they go to middle school, and as they go to high school, that drops off 30 points in one section about safety.
Yes.
It drops off 40% on do my teachers care and check up on me. So I can appreciate the discussion about pre-K, but as I'm seeing some of these scores that you said was roughly 90% of the kids responding, that's some pretty big numbers. And so, one, to address that, and also is there any correlation between the discipline policies? I know as a coach, and Randy's been a coach too, if you have one bad apple, that can spoil the bunch. And so sometimes with soft discipline, that hurts more. And I hope that it's not that some of these kids that are there are feeling less safe because maybe some of the kids that shouldn't be there, they should have got that suspension, are now in school, and that's maybe why they feel less safe. Is there any correlation?
Right. No, I understand your question, and here's like a lot of things, it's a little complex and there's a balance. Some of the most severe behaviors need to be addressed and can't be addressed in a comprehensive school environment. Those kids need to be removed and put in an alternative place, and we are doing that and are continuing to do that. To be honest, the school board, we changed the policy, as I told you earlier, about bringing the most severe cases to the board before they were handled, but we wanted to build transparency in the community about our discipline policies. And I think it might have been Dr. Dolan Sewell, I don't know, a few weeks into school, well, hey, we haven't got anything yet. And those meetings I think are Tuesday and Thursday night. Now they've had several weeks of having them. I'm going to bring serious ones to this board for action. But I do think there's another group of kids. They're not severe disciplinary issues, but they need to feel a connection. They haven't felt a connection. They don't feel an identity in the school. And there are things we can do to connect with them and really get them on the right track and more excited about school. So it's important. And it's important as part of school leadership to make sure we don't overcorrect. It's not anything goes, but it is every child by name and by need. The most significant behaviors may require alternative settings. Behaviors that are moderate may be able, through support of a social worker, behavior coach, be redirected. And it is a it is a mindset change of, hey, look, and we've had teachers say, look, in the old days, I told a kid to jump, and they should say how high, and we had a paddle, and that was that. But we're not in that world anymore. We do need to keep firm expectations, but we can do it in a way where we're helping kids. Part of what we're doing now when we have some kids come down is we're doing reset rooms. They go see a counselor first instead of the administrator, because in the old model, the administrator, oh, you're here, you're going to get in-school suspension. Now they need a counselor. Why are you down here? What have you done? Trying to unpack why they're behaving the way they are and get back. And some of it, teachers are learning there's a few things that they did that became a power struggle in the class that they could change it. And it's not a big change, actually lets kids have more success.
And then if you could just address the macro perspective of the elementary to, I mean, it's a noticeable difference from elementary to high school.
Yeah, you know, there was a national study by Gallup about 10 years ago. Hope for kids is the number one culture thing connected with kids' success. The kids that were most hopeful performed the best in school. Maybe not surprising, but just emotionally. Hope is highest nationally in elementary. There is a slight drop at 6th grade when kids enter middle. The largest drop occurs in 9th grade at high schools across the country. It catches up to kids. They're in a larger school. They're just a number. And hope drops off. And that's where we are losing many of our kids. And when kids feel disconnected, then they're going to act out and do things that make other kids maybe be concerned about safety. Or does a teacher care about me? That's part of why we created the Empowerment Academy and creating a smaller environment where there's more opportunity to create that tight family atmosphere and less distractions of 1,000 kids every 45 minutes when you change classes or more. But that's work we have to do. And I told the high school, I shared that data and go, those numbers are not acceptable, but we've got to build it together. We've got to listen to the kids, we've got to listen to each other and figure out things that we can do, both small and large, that make kids feel more connected in school. One's having better teaching. A great lesson will connect the kid more, but another is a deeper relationship with kids. And we really have tried to, teachers want to rush to the SOLs because they know I'm going to present here and the scores need to go up. But the first couple of days, and then as part of every day, they've got to keep building a relationship with kids. Or kids deep down work for the teacher almost as much as anything else, no matter what the content is. And we've got to make that front and center.
And maybe one of our community's challenge would be that how can we as a community help the school system give more of our children hope, build more of the relationship. And there are programs, I mean, Jubilee does this, Boys and Girls Club does this, and Councilmember Helgeson, he was a big brother. You know, maybe utilizing some of those other resources collectively, because that's a tremendous burden. I was a classroom teacher.
Right.
To put on teachers and administrators, you know, maybe as we move forward in our talks about how we can come together as a community and have this excellence in all phases of our community, how we can help with that particular item of giving hope and building relationships with children who are sitting in our schools, particularly as they get older.
We had a few of you participate at the beginning of the year in an opening day welcome that was very powerfully received by our schools and faculty as students were greeted. And we have a Partners in Education meeting in 2 weeks. There'll be an announcement there where we're going to collect all the mentoring needs of every school and share this Partners. There's about 200-300 businesses. Specific school requests. We need 10 mentors on Friday to do this. We need 50 mentors on lunches to do that, and get that out this year. Dr. Huskin is working on that. We had our Board of Education, our Partners in Education board meeting on Monday of this week, and we're going to have that in time for this meeting right before Thanksgiving. We've got to get more folks in our schools helping support and mentor these kids so that they know it's not just the teacher reaching out, it's the community reaching out.
Right. School board time. Anyone else give yours?
Well, I just had something quick to say about hope as far as, let's not forget about hope for the teachers as well. I know we're polling the students and we're considering, hope to be something that can really expedite or gain the attention of students, but hope for teachers is just as important. I know with all the challenging environments, making sure that we're, as a community, supporting our teachers, whatever that may mean. I know the focus is on the students, but the teachers have a tough road in front of them. So I just didn't want to leave them out of that process. We're thinking about different resources we can tap into to provide them with support as well.
Excellent. Councilmember Walter.
Yeah, since we talked about just a little bit, and I understand the kids who might need the long-term suspension and certain things like that, but I'm more concerned about the ones who were not really ready for that long-term suspension but need to stay in the school. Are you still doing in-school suspensions, and what measures we are doing with that area?
Yeah, we still have in-school suspension. In fact, we increased that as an alternative to suspension 2 or 3 years ago, where the student could still be in school and have access to doing work. We're trying to continue to look at other ways, Saturday school, after school, where we can get kids still connected with learning. The reality is those kids, many of the kids whose behavior creates a suspension are struggling in school, and we've got to be providing. If we provide better academic interventions, we can maybe lessen, for some of them, the behavior interventions. The behavior's coming because of frustration. So we've made some alternatives like that. We have some schools where there's like at Heritage here, there's a TAT team, a teacher assistance team that meet with the kids and start to explore what's going on and try to come up with, based on what the kid says, what we can do differently. We've got to continue to expand those options. But, you know, in a perfect world, I would love to have resources that when any kid's suspended, there could be an alternative place where those suspended kids could go in a community and still be in a safe setting and receive attempt to continue to do instruction.
Yes. Let's see, that was a council member. Do we have another school board member?
I'd like to take it one step further, that not only do we need to support the teachers, but we need to support all the workers in our education system. I've seen really powerful things happen with kids on the school bus because the bus driver interacted with them in such a manner that gave them hope. Our custodial staff, the cafeteria workers, it is really important that we support them and that they support our kids, because their interaction often is the thing that makes the child feel hope. So it's not just with our teachers, but all the staff in our school system.
I'll defer to someone else if there's someone else who will.
Councilmember Dalton.
No, I just want to say, can you hear me? I think we need not to forget this whole issue of preschool. You know, you climb the ladder from the bottom up. And I think that we need to develop programs in our community so that we can truly have these children that are reading proficient at 3rd grade level and get them through school so that they don't get frustrated, so that they don't lose hope. You can talk all we want to talk about all the behavioral problems and everything, but I think if we start these kids, we've got to figure out how we can work maybe with the medical system, putting together programs with the community to get at these young children, work with the churches, and work with the families. Because this is the only way we're going to solve it. It's all tied in the poverty issue, and it works its way up.
So probably, when hearing you, I'm just kind of processing that not only should this fall on the schools' United Way, but maybe our congregations, our whole entire community. You know, wouldn't it be lovely if we could all say we could adopt a child and read to them at least once a week? I know there's a lot of reading goes on in the schools, but maybe have more of a concerted effort to bring our children along and build that relationship. It's just food for thought. One of the maybe answers. I love solutions. You know, we throw out a lot tonight, but if anyone has solutions or thoughts, even after tonight's meeting, maybe we should feel free of throwing those ideas out, either to Dr. Braybrand or to our city manager, myself, Mr. Nillis, and we can pass that on as we go and we process and we digest what has been said here tonight. There's some great minds sitting at this table tonight.
Okay, if no one else will take the chance. I'm a supporter. Let's just say that. I'm a supporter. But really, I'm kind of confused because I'm really seeing, right now as I listen and said, I see two separate school systems. I really do. I know we made gains and we made incremental gains, but I see a narrowing, taking too long to get to that point that we want to get to target group for the specific demographics. And I see two school divisions. And I think we do come together and we have some great minds. What I would like to maybe throw out there from this meeting is that we did a community-wide task force to build heritage. I think we need a community-wide task force to look at education in our system and the things that we need to do to make this, some people say don't say the needle move or whatever, but to get to that target group and lessen the time getting there. Because what I've heard tonight is some of the problems are on the teachers. Some of them aren't able to teach urban. We've got to take time to teach them. And then I'm hearing some of the problems are on the behavior of the students. I mean, it's like we have to come up with some type of game plan from here. And I understand that you all are, and you've made strides, and you're doing the systematic things to make it done, and you come, and we've given kindergarten aids and monies and that sort of thing. We're still missing something somewhere. Because when I look at the data, as Councilmember Hegelson, I think, or Councilmember Pero said, 90% of the kids are coming to school. They're coming to school. So even poor kids are coming to school. So it's not attendance. It's what's happening when they get there. If it's the hope, but it's happening in the school. So I mean, because they're coming. Now you can say they don't have support outside the school. That's something that a task force we need to look at. Where are the communities, the kids who have less support, and how do we build wraparounds around those communities? But I think to go back and say, okay, schools, you figure it out, and then you bring it to us, and then you're developing a plan here for this group, and we need like a think tank of community folks, the same type of folks who came together for the plan of Heritage High School. They were from all walks, they had all experiences, and they brought ideas to the we came up, look at where we are. And they brought funding options, and we need that type of thing, because some of this people have said is going to take more money, but if we put more money on this end and we add teacher training here, I'm seeing a lot of professional development, I'm seeing a lot of, we've got student programs, how do they all work together? And then for the community to be able to adopt something, how do they process that all of this is working together for the good of the kids? And some folks, let's be honest, don't want all this happening. They don't really care about all of this happening. They really don't. But we still have to make the school system Ivy League for them. So, I think we need a task force to figure out for the kids who are in the most severe, most crucial, crisis moment, needing social work, needing workforce, whatever it is they need. We need great minds to come together and help build a plan to assist you all. And I don't think if we don't do it now, it's going to take, we'll be back at these same meetings for the next several years.
And I know this morning, we have the Mayor's Youth Group, and these are leaders within our schools, public schools and private schools. But they were saying across the board, there are certain areas that all kids fall, all kids are at risk. Not just those who are living in poverty. They're maybe even more at risk because they have that piece to deal with as well. But there are lots of issues out there. So I like that thought that was thrown out there, Mr. Knowles. I know you've been awfully quiet tonight, and a lot of us have been talking. The thought of a task force coming together, looking at this. How does the school board, how does leadership feel about that? Is that, is that a comfortable feeling you're feeling now that that's been thrown out there? How can we move forward with that thought? I mean, tonight we can't, but can we?
Well, I'll share with you one thing. Danny Rule and I was asked to present about turnaround performance at the House and Senate Education and Health Committees that were hosted here in Lynchburg. It's the only superintendent asked, well, the superintendent, myself, and Petersburg. And Danny Rule was brought, again, Darrington, 30-point gains in 2 years. Part of what even our local delegation, Delegate Garrett and Senator Newman, asked a question about greater cooperation between the school system, social services at the city, the Community Services Board, which is Horizon here in the area, and maybe even the healthcare system around these issues about the social, emotional challenges of kids and that interfering in the academic, especially those kids in crisis. And I believe, in my discussions with them, that if we find the right model, there will be support from our delegation in Richmond to help put the resources, whether they be local or state or even federal, to make it happen. The truth is, a lot of communities have struggled with this and they don't have the model. It's just not out there sitting. We've got to probably work to create it, and I think it's an interesting concept you raised tonight, Ms. Tweedy. What's the right vehicle to create that, and who needs to be at the table? And is it just those folks, or is it people from all walks of the community helping inform what that model would look like? But I think part of it is being more outside the box than we've been so we can accelerate. We're improving. This school district is improving. The bottom line is it's not fast enough. I get that. And I believe that. And how do we accelerate improvement at orders of magnitude? And this could be one of the ways to look at it.
It's 7:18, and this is really great discussion and everything, but we have families who are waiting. We've got youth that we're expected to be a part of the Empowerment Academy presentation starting almost 20 minutes.
Right. And Dr. Coleman, I do want to come to you, but I would prefer that with those families here, that maybe we have that presentation. Dr. Coleman, can you hold your thought till after that?
I'd be honored to.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, because I think it's important that we hear this next presentation, hear from our families and our youth, and then in closing, because we are going to talk about our collaborative efforts after that we can come back to this thought. I don't want to kill the thinking that's going on with this table tonight.
Okay, so that would be good. So I can have an opportunity to ask questions also then?
Absolutely.
All right,
because
let's do
we
that
have
at the collaboration
opportunity. Let's
update.
let the families speak in the Empowerment Academy.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fabulous, thank you. First and foremost, good evening, and thank you for taking the time for myself and for my wonderful program that I'm here to represent and advocate for.
Use the mic
yes,
just because
I'm
it's on.
sorry, I apologize. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me, as well as my families, to come and explain and brag just a bit about a fabulous program that we have going and have had going since the 15th of August. And then I'm going to let my speakers speak for me, but I do want to start with an apology. I had 2 more additional speakers, one just in case. And this is a reflection of the reality, I think, both of Lynchburg City Schools, of schools anywhere, but of the reality that we face at the Empowerment Academy. One of my speakers, one young lady, is a mother with a sick baby and could not come. She didn't have child care. The baby was feverish, so we didn't want to bring the baby. And the second speaker, unfortunately, was directly connected to a death, was at a funeral today at Community Funeral Home of a gentleman that passed on Friday. But Traquan Harden wanted me to mention his name and sincerely apologize for not being here and welcome you to come and see him, as well as Shaquan Thompson, to come and see the both of them and speak to them because they had prepared a presentation. But we have Matthew Young with us and Mom is Nowlin at the end of her presentation. But I wanted to start with an apology and make sure that I express my condolences both to the loss that my students were facing, and they asked me to speak for them and apologize and explain. But to start off, the Empowerment Academy, I feel blessed. I feel very fortunate to have this opportunity to be the director of, I feel, a groundbreaking and amazing program. I have the amazing blessing to be in charge of and oversee and collaborate with 38 wonderful individuals, young ladies and gentlemen, every day. And the individuals that are in my program, the young ladies and gentlemen, are from EC Glass and from Heritage High School. Those are their zoned schools, but are with me for a variety of reasons. Each of my students, every single student, all 38, have their own story. Several of which would be interested in doing an LCS story, just to let you know where they're coming from. We are a mixture of students, both boys and girls, white, black, and Latino. As of the 14th, when we developed this presentation, the 14th of October, our enrollment was 36. We are 38 as of yesterday, Monday. We added 2 more students, so we now have 21 from EC Glass. But again, each have their own stories and why they are with us. And it also has a breakdown of each of the years that we have. I serve freshmen through seniors. I even have term grads as well. So I am hopeful that we will have 5 graduates in December. They're working hard, and I'm so excited to be able to partake in that. And again, just to provide you with just a snapshot of the demographics that we have. When we look at students, my counselor and myself, we meet with each student and parent, depending on circumstance. I have some students that are 18, 19, maybe emancipated, etc., but meet with parents and students to ask them a series of questions in the interview. Tell me about your story. Tell me why you want to be here. We do have placement criteria. But I'm going to be perfectly transparent in telling you that if they have a drive to want to be there, if they meet a specific criteria, no major behavioral infractions. While saying that, as a special educator and just an educator in general, students that have struggled and have not experienced a consistent success are going to exhibit and exude frustration. And that comes out in behaviors that we may not always want. It could be avoidance, it could be a variety of different things. So also know that I don't look at referrals and say, oh, you have referrals, I'm so sorry. There could be some for attendance and skipping. If you don't know the content, typically you tend to want to skip or act out. So just to give you just a little background when I say, no major infractions, some people hear that as no infractions, and I do expect at times that students will act out when they're frustrated. So there are going to be some with some minor behavioral infractions. It could be SOL assistance that my students need, and traditionally that is the case. It could also be credit recovery, which is traditionally the case. My students have struggled academically, so they are behind on credits and have the motivation to want to finish, to want to catch up, to want to be classified as their year says. So if I am a 16, 17-year-old, I want to be classified as a sophomore or a junior, depending on my birth date, and not as a freshman. So that is a part of the criteria as well. And typically that comes with a unique instructional need. It could also be a unique emotional need as well. Again, that personal story. That is the criteria that I look at when I am evaluating the appropriateness and effectiveness of my program to meet the needs of students that are applying to come to the Empowerment Academy. It is an application process, if you will. It's not a give and a take per se with Heritage and with Glass. It's not Dr. Brabrand, and I'm going to go back to when he was a Mr. Brabrand, history teacher, giving me a call and saying, Casey, I need you to take math. Okay, so no, we have a process. Make sure that you're going through guidance staff, administrators, let me know a little bit about Matthew, etc. So they're coming in, they're interviewing it. It's a process for them to be there. We want to be the elite school. The word is out on the street that the Empowerment Academy is the place to be, and we want to keep that going, and we will keep that going. In terms of programming, In looking at extended learning, Mr. Rudder there in the back paid me a visit recently and said, Casey, I'm excited because we have opportunities to assist you with funding to help meet the needs of your students with an extended learning grant. That's outside of school hours. What can you do? I had approached my students and said, ladies and gentlemen, tell me how you're feeling about intercession. Initially, it was Ms. Crabb, we're going to be transparent, we're tapped out. You have been working us. We're tired, we need a break. I got to work, try to make a little bit of money, catch up on those hours. So I thought, oh, okay, Mr. Rudder, it's not looking good. And then I had a group of nine students that came to me and said, okay, we changed our mind. We're looking at our grades, we're looking at the progress we're making in our online classes, and we need to be here. So I thought, all right, let's get it going. I called Mr. Rudder and called Sarah Campbell and said, I know it's a little late notice, what can we do? My students want to learn, how can we make it work? So when we're looking at extended learning, those are opportunities that we are thankful to have. We're looking at building on to, unfortunately, I don't have elective teachers. So when I'm polling my students, when I'm surveying, saying, what do you need? When I'm listening to them in the cafeteria, the hallway, or when they're coming to talk to me about things they need, things like behind the wheel are coming up. So I am working with both high schools, but Heritage is who I reached out to first because I happen to know Coach Poles, to see what he could do to help my students in their own environment if they don't transition to Heritage or Glass, to help them meet that need as well. So again, looking at some possible opportunities outside of the traditional school day. Just to back up just a second, I have students, and it's coming up on another slide, that may or may not feed into their school or transition back into their school during the day, and we'll get to that just a little bit later, but just to give you an idea of that as well. We are looking at some opportunities for just thinking outside of the box. I have a teacher that wants to teach etiquette. And that's kind of her unique niche and specialty. I have another teacher, I did not include it on the slide, but we were talking today on the way to Lehman Farms, and he said, I really like mechanics. And several of my gentlemen and two of my young ladies are interested in that. And that's kind of my background hobby. I rebuild engines, things like that. Could we do some of that after school? What can we do? So those sorts of things, we are trying to think outside of the box and use that funding that thankfully Mr. Rudder and Ms. Campbell approached me with to extend those learning opportunities outside of the school day as much as we can. When looking at our programming and our collaborations, that's key. And that's part of the heart and pivotal foundation of what the Empowerment Academy is about. Making those connections within the community, because my students need those connections outside of the four walls that we have at the Empowerment Academy. I'm excited to be working with the Boys and Girls Club. We're in the perfect location for it, in the same building. I have been working with Mark, who is the director, to coordinate some programs. We've already had the students go up. He invited us to come up and do a speech on some soft work skills, interview skills, just providing an opportunity for them to come and see the new facility in the Teen Center, invite them to come. I now have two that are coming up there every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday to work on applications and access that teen center as they need, and work with the gentleman whose name is slipping my mind right now that facilitates that teen and work program. Wonderful, wonderful. So those sorts of collaborations are key, and I'm looking to branch out as well to see what else we can do. Dr. Brabrand and Mr. Copeland and I were visiting the Goodwill industry and shelter right in Madison Heights, and I got great ideas of speakers that could come in and speak to my students, and I didn't know the plethora of things. Thank you, Mrs. Tweedy, for the invite, that they can offer my students and that we can also offer them within the community. So we will be looking at some things that we can do to give back as well. Beacon of Hope. I can't say enough amazing things. They've been coming over to work with my students. I have 2 students, one just today, that has already spoken to Ms. Fleshman at CBCC to work on some enrollment, and I have one that is accepted to Ecology, sending his acceptance letter back. And that is due in large part to Ms. V at EC Glass. With Beacon of Hope, they are coming back, both ladies, Mrs. McQueen as well as Ms. V, to speak to the students in 2 weeks about some other opportunities so that we know what's going on. So again, those partnerships are pivotal so that they have something above and beyond, and it's sustainable. We're equipping our students with what we need. In terms of experiences, again, very fortunate to have 2 students. Traquan Harden was one of them. Terrell Clark is another, to be a part of Vector Space. Amazing program. They are working on CO2 cars as we speak. Vector Space came in, spoke to my students, got them all pumped and hyped about the possibilities, but we also talked about the amazing commitment. So they're learning life skills in addition to skills that they can take out into the workforce and arm themselves with. We will be going to the career fair at Fort Hill Community School on Thursday, the 3rd, I got my date right, on Thursday, to again meet with several different vendors and different places that can provide our students with what they need that is sustainable skills that can make them successful outside of Lynchburg City Schools, outside of the walls of Empowerment Academy. And that's what it's about, giving them as many resources as possible so that they are well equipped to succeed. We are coordinating a CBC trip. I speak to Ms. Michelle. Yes, Ms. Michelle Fletcher, I'm sorry, I said Fleshman earlier, I apologize, please excuse me. But speak with Ms. Fletcher with CBCC on Thursday to coordinate a trip when I see her, and again, have her also come in and see our space and what we can offer. We're also going to be looking to go to Job Corps. I'm going to be meeting with a gentleman there on Thursday, as will my counselor. So again, just saturating the students with as many resources as possible. That is a unique entity that we have the time to focus on, and because we're so small, that's why I say time, although time is of the essence, to provide those opportunities to my students that may not have that opportunity in a school of 1,200 or 1,400, again, which makes us unique. When going back to program design, and I mentioned it earlier, we have 4 different schedules. Each student, again, is unique and has their own story, and I'm sorry to continue to repeat myself, but that's what we're about. It's every student. When we say by name and by need, we live it, we breathe it every second of every day, even today, coming here with phone calls going, Ms. Crabb, I'm so sorry because. So every student by name and by need, and with that means, how can we meet your need while still making you successful? So I have students that come to us all day from 7 to 2. I have students that transition either to their high school or to work, either at 11 or 12:15. So that makes us a tad bit unique in that we have that ability to have different schedules. So just to give you a snapshot of the different opportunities and a little bit of flexibility that we have to offer. My staff is a staff of 9, and we were talking about that family feel. We are a family at the Empowerment Academy in every sense of the word. We have team meetings and family meetings, and we have a dining room. For those of you that have been, we can't say a cafeteria, it's a small, very intimate space that I love. So we sit around as a family when we have breakfast. We sit around as a family when we have lunch. And I think that's another entity that makes us unique and that I love and love to brag on. And being that we are a staff of 9, we are right there, we are hands-on, and that includes 4 teachers, an office manager, myself, a guidance counselor, a mental health counselor, and TDT counselor, therapeutic day treatment counselor through Anderson, a nurse, licensed nurse, as well as fabulous school and nutrition staff. So we had a little changeover in that area, but fabulous nutrition staff. So a staff of 9, extremely hands-on. We know our students by name and by need. With that comes the unique ability to know exactly what they need in terms of small group, differentiation, learning styles, and again, that's what makes us successful. That's what's been driving us. And is the key for who we are and what we are. And we've already covered it, but again, part of our program and design is making sure that we are infiltrating, if you will, the community so that we can get our tentacles out there, not to use an analogy, but it was the English teacher in me, to get our tentacles out there so that I know exactly what my students need and can bring it back or at least make it available to them. For glows and grows, to borrow Dr. Braybrand's term, I can glow all day long. GLOW is the Empowerment Academy, but to be specific, it's our family feel. It's the ability to watch Matt walk in the door every day, greet him individually, see who might be a little bit off. So I might feel it out, Matt. How you doing? I'm angry, I need to talk to you in a little bit, but right now I need to go get my Pop-Tart and my juice and just have a minute. Okay, yes sir. You know where to find me, or I'll come find him if he may forget to find me. But it's that ability to have the family feel and go, okay, I hear what you're saying, what can we do to help? That's the major glow in all this, in my opinion, and I'll let my family speak for us. Within that family feel and the entity that gives us that family feel is the amazing building and space that we have. That Lynchburg City Schools maintenance workers did an amazing job on. Our capacity is only 40, which again gives us that family feel. My small staff of 9 allows us to have that family and hands-on feel. It allows us to individualize our instruction and our care overall, because it's not just about academics. Our students come with lots of extra. I don't want to say baggage because that puts a negative spin on things, but a lot of extra situations that they bring into it. So we can't just force math and English and all the core contents at them without recognizing that they're going through a lot, which is the primary reason why they're here and with us, and recognizing that and accepting us while not loving them to failure and setting expectations. For grows, money's a good thing. Continuous funding, and I think that also goes back to collaboration, being here today, getting the word out. This is the Empowerment Academy. We are warriors. This is what we're here for. This is what we're about. We are a great extension. I explained it as shared custody with Heritage and Glass. So they are not only hilltoppers and warriors, they are not only pioneers and warriors. We have shared custody. We are all in this together. It's a 360. They're not my kids, they're not your kids, they're our kids, because when they go out there and they have to take care of us, when we're not able to take care of ourselves, they are our kids. And that's something that we infuse. So that continuous funding to keep us going, there's a need. And I hate that we can only take 40, but I respect that 40 is what we can do, and 40 sometimes equals 400. Don't say that to Matt. But given that they have those needs, it's labor intensive. So they keep us busy, certainly. But again, grows, continuing that funding and seeing what we can do to branch out and to make sure that we're meeting the needs of students. Technology and STEM activities, so continuing things like vector space. I know that's more of a partnership, but what vector space represents. So making it hands-on, it's skills that they can take into the workforce, things that they would go, oh, I'm not good at welding, for example, when they're having to solder things together. I may never know that I was good at that or not, dislike or like, because I've never had that opportunity. So having the technology and availability to do those STEM activities. And to be transparent, we have a child care barrier. I have young ladies that are unable to attend in a traditional setting because they have child care. So it's reaching out to me to say, Ms. Crabb, can you come pick me up because my babysitter was late, or things changed, or the Armony just got sick all over the place. Can you help me, please? So that's a reality and a challenge and a barrier. I'm going to stop speaking, and I'll come back for questions, but I want to open it up to 2 amazing people and just a small representation. I would like to bring many more of my parents and my students, so, and I'll close with please come visit. you're more than welcome to, but I'm going to turn it over to Matthew Young, one of my students.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
I'm Matthew. I attend Empowerment and Easy Glass. First, I'd like to point out what Ms. Crowd was speaking about family. When we go, when we walk in, we're not like determined by a grade, like a grade letter or like, we're not like, oh, you're in 12th grade, 11th grade. It's, hey, you're Matthew. Come in, we'd love to teach you. We love, to help you out. It's a lot different from glass because we don't really feel like we're just put in categories. We feel like we're all one together, like united. And that helps a lot. Like, it makes everybody a lot more comfortable. It also helps a lot with distractions. It's where it's really small. You don't have many places where you can get mixed, like lost, and you can just stay focused with your work and your study and all that. Let's see, I'm a little like.
Great job.
You talked about Ms. Fessler earlier, your counselor, if you need her for anything.
Oh, yeah.
Spend exorbitant amount of
Well,
money for her.
okay, well, we have the counselor, Ms. Fessler, who we can go to talk about anything really, but, I mean, it's not just her that we have to talk to. We can talk to any of the teachers, and it's all the same. It all feels the same. Like, they're all there for anything. Like, in our classes, we don't just have 10th graders in one class, 11th graders in one class. We have all of the grades mixed together, but we're still, I don't know how to explain that. Like, we're still doing work. It's just in separate groups, but we're still together somehow. It's really confusing. I'm struggling a little bit. Would anyone like to ask questions to help me out?
Is there another speaker?
Mom's going to come up, and then we'll open it up for questions. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He got to go first. I will start out by saying we actually moved to Lynchburg in '08 for Lynchburg schools. We visited in April of 2008, Dunbar. My oldest was going into 6th grade, and they had an open house, and we went and fell in love with their technology center, and we were just like, okay, that's awesome. And then all the other schools were equally as awesome. And Matthew had a little bit of adjustment to Easy Glass, and he went to Fort Hill the following year. Still a little bit of a struggle because it's very intense. It's 3 hours, it's packets, it's very focused. So I actually emailed Dr. Braybrand and was like, can you help me? This is the issue. This is where he struggles. I don't know what to do. So we had a meeting, and he sat next to me. And I remember when I left the meeting, I told everybody, I was like, he didn't sit behind the desk. He came and sat. And we had a conversation about what Matthew needed. And he told me that there was a program in development. He explained the Empowerment Academy. And I left, and I was like, there's nothing like that. That can't happen. That's too perfect. And it did, and he went, and you heard him, and he is leaps and bounds beyond anything he was. Because of what they both described, like he goes in the door, and I don't know how to explain it any better than he did, and they see Matthew. They know Matthew enough to know if it's a good day or bad day. And what they kind of need to do and how to help him. Like every teacher there knows exactly what he needs, and it's not the same in every class. Like everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. They know that, and they teach to that. And this is probably going to sound weird, but one of his teachers, Miss Oliver, gave some of her students office chairs. He forgot it, so I just said it. Because she noticed a lot of her kids struggled to focus because they were having to sit still. So they can kind of twist back and forth in the chairs. And she said she noticed a huge difference. And I was like, that's so amazing. She was able to recognize that, make a seating adjustment, and now, he's focused. I wish I could put them in the house, but it's little things that they're able to notice because they're smaller. And they can focus on these kids individually. Miss Crab knew him from Dunbar, which is an added bonus because she also knows how to push him. So he has kind of taken, I don't want to say a leadership role, but he starts encouraging others and helping others. So it gives him more confidence to keep doing what he's doing and growing. And I can't say any more good things than they did, but it's great. And I was so glad he mentioned it, even though I didn't think it was real. And that he was able to go after we applied. He needed the distraction free. And he didn't need quite the intensive focus that Fort Hill has, which was great. I mean, they were wonderful, but this is letting him grow and find his way, and he's helping others and doing well.
So I guess I'd like to say, Matthew, it takes a lot of courage to step up in front of a group of.
That's right.
And I can say that we're all behind you. We're all hopeful for the Empowerment Academy, and we look at this as this is an excellent sign, and kudos to you and your mom and all the students there. I think we have time for a few questions or comments. Support.
Yeah, you're super brave. It's really hard to get up in front of people without notes, and you did a great job. So you should be. I don't know if you do public speaking there. That's a great little add-on. But yeah, you did a great job representing your school and your classmates. I was curious, what's your favorite part? Like, what do you like most about being there?
Probably the distraction part. Like, I can do my work so much easier there.
Yeah.
And there's so much one-on-one since there's so little of people. It helps a lot.
That's good.
Very good.
And I think, Matthew, also this goes to the fact about the engagement, engaging students, making them feel a part, and also the fact that now you're taking on a leadership role. That's awesome. And if there were any doubts regarding starting this academy, I think you have let us know that this was a great step. We need to try to get more students in there and expand it. So great job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Either from Matthew or Ms. Pratt?
Do you have any suggestions?
Anything different, anything to add?
Not anything you wouldn't hear from another student. My opinion, I don't like SWLs, but.
Join the club.
He was trying to be a background. Be quiet. I was like, you can't say that.
Yes, you can. Just here for a
Well, I've got some specific questions for Ms. Grant, but I don't want to hold them up if they need to get done.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll hear another one.
Have you guys ever thought about letting students on this?
Have a student representative.
A student representative? Have you guys thought about that?
I just wish you guys could have, he's
Yeah,
back there
'cause
just plugging away.
I feel like it'd be a lot easier to, change the schools from a student point of view. Like, it'd be a lot easier to see it from how we see it.
That's a great
Well,
suggestion.
the mayor's youth council would be happy to have a representative from the Empowerment Academy.
I'd love to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Great job. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Grant, thank you so much for the presentation.
Fantastic. Just a question. What is your definition of success, and how do you measure against it?
I can't explain it, I could show you more than anything. My definition of success is visiting Lehman Farms with 22 of my students, and you think, okay, that's a baby place to go. You're going to Lehman Farms to see one student that I'm thinking of in particular that I have not seen smile, a real smile, a smile that's been held for 30 seconds until today, when we are out there, again, simple things, picking out pumpkins, sitting around and talking about what this means to them and what their experience is because they picked it. Those sorts of things, providing an experience that they wouldn't otherwise have. Seeing my students, Matthew, and several others that I have enrolled, come to me and say, okay, I got this. I can do this. Taking leadership roles and develop into those young ladies and gentlemen that are willing to step out there. Matthew made a comment when we were talking about the great things that school nutrition and bus drivers and other pivotal people do that sometimes we have a tendency to maybe fade to the back. He said, I would never get into a fight on Miss So-and-so's bus because she's Miss So-and-so and she knows me every day and greets me every day. It's those sorts of things. I feel like the success is knowing that my students feel safe, knowing that my students feel safe enough within their classes to take educational and academic risks, opening up to me to tell me what their reality is and what they need, having them think to call me at 6:45 to profusely apologize and ask me to mention their names and why they weren't able to make it, that's a success for me. Now, also, successes are things like having a pass rate that is 79% in reading on the work keys thus far and 81% on the writing thus far. Those are numbers, and I know that we operate by numbers. I'm going to be pretty transparent in telling you that my warm and fuzzies make it worth it. Those little minuscule moments to most, that's what makes it a success for me. That's the success.
Other questions, comments? Ms. Carter?
Can you explain the acceptance rate? Is that, do you accept everyone that's referred? How?
No, ma'am, and I didn't mean to cut you off, and actually, a good but a bad thing, I guess, a negative and a positive. We currently have 9 students on our waiting list, and as much as I would like to take everyone, you're applying to come because you at least have to have an inkling, and I know some of my students are beat down, so I recognize that, but that drive to want to come and excel academically despite the obstructions of life is putting in front of you. So no, I do not accept everyone. While it breaks my heart, I want my students to excel and exceed and achieve many different successes in many different realms, academic and non-academic. And if there's something that maybe says maybe they're not ready to make that full commitment, I do not accept. As much as it breaks my heart, it's also the reality. I only have 40 slots, and those 40 slots I need to be filled with students that are ready, and sometimes they're just not ready.
Just one question as far as extracurricular activities. Are students at the school allowed to do the extracurricular activities? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Polly. Thank you for asking that because, again, that's the nucleus of what makes the Empowerment Academy unique. My students, again, are Hilltoppers, Pioneers, and Warriors. It's a trifecta that we have going. So I have students that absolutely were on that field on Friday night battling it out for bragging rights, be it on the football field, the soccer field, the field hockey field, ROTC and drill, marching band. They very much have the opportunity to be a part of #1 big orange country in Hilltopper Town. So yes, sir, they absolutely, and I encourage them to get involved in both different locations because it has lots to offer. Both schools do, so yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The child care situation, I think you were talking about opportunities for a wraparound. That's a problem for your students and for like a whole lot of people. I have a friend that lives, this is just an idea to throw out there, I have a friend that lives in Pittsburgh, and she posted this really cool program. It's an emergency child care services. So if suddenly you need a babysitter to go to work and you work third shift, you know there is a place that can take your child if you're on that list.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
that just seems like in a city like ours, it would be a really necessary thing, especially when we have students, not just there, but at our other high schools too, that they can't get to class because they have a child. And there a lot of kids can't get to school because their parents, they need child care after school or before school. So an emergency child care service seems like it would really be useful for a lot of reasons.
And I would be open to anything. It was one of the things, Dr. Coleman, I reached out to you during the open house, and thank you that I just want to reach out. Anybody that may have any resource, we are open, and I'll leave cards, anything that you can think to help my students in need. I see Dr. Bruce back there and Ms. Ethel Reeves, who have both been pivotal and on the spot for me when I call and say, I've got a student with a need, and I am not too proud to tell you that I don't know it, but I will call and reach out to whomever or drive to whatever location is needed in order to help my students, and they have been on the spot. So I am open to any suggestions, resources that you all may have, because it's a real barrier. And I have young ladies and gentlemen that are dying to come to school, but they also have to provide that support for their child. So what do we do? It's between a rock and a hard place. It's a sticky wicket. So if you can think of anything, I've got 2 wonderful resources within Lynchburg City Schools that have been very hands-on, those 2 ladies there, but if you can think of anything.
That was my question too, for the child care area. Is it ongoing continuous child care to be consistent, or is it just the emergency, more crisis need?
I know this seems like a strange answer, but it's both. It really just depends. It ebbs and it flows, depending on the individual situation. For example, I have a young lady with a 7-month-old, and mom, grandma to the little girl, just got a full-time job, which is amazing. So she was excited for mom, but not because then what do I do now? So am I going to miss school? Am I going to have to leave early when mom needs to go to work? So she's going to come pick me up so I can go back home and care for the child. What do I do? So it's a bit of both.
How many parents do you have that have children?
I have 4. Yes, ma'am.
It's 8 o'clock. We're a half hour over schedule.
No,
it's not. So I would, people are amenable. I'd like to move on to the next one so we can get through to the city school collaboration.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
I've
you.
left
Thank
cards.
you very
Feel
much.
free to come and visit.
We're going to do this.
I think we can do this part pretty quickly. Dr. Bergman and I are going to tag team on this, but I just wanted to share a couple of things regarding the city-school cooperation and collaboration and consolidation. First, on consolidation, I think many of you have already heard that we have finally, after 5 years, combined our medical and pharmacy plans. And as of January 1st, the city organization and schools will have fully consolidated medical and pharmacy plans. We've had combined dental and vision plans. Open enrollment, I believe, has started both in Lynchburg City Schools, and I know it has within the city organization as well. I want to particularly, it's getting late, want to commend Anthony Beckles, CFO, and Margaret Schmidt, our newly retired Director of Human Resources. Today is actually her very first day of retirement, but they did a bang-up job in negotiating with Anthem and looking through all of these responses to the RFP. So a long time coming. We think we are going to realize some cost savings, and that is always good news. So That's on health benefits. The other thing I want to talk about, and I can't talk too much about this because I have not had an opportunity to talk with City Council yet about the concept that I and senior staff and the mayor and vice mayor have been working on in terms of a conceptual plan regarding how we can work towards impacting positively the poverty rate in terms of reduction. We have a 3-part plan. The superintendent and I have been meeting. It includes a stronger relationship between the city and Lynchburg City Schools. We know from research and from conversation that we can only break the cycle of poverty if we approach it from a 2-generation perspective. So we have a plan that is going to hopefully impact adults, so Generation 1, and the children of those adults as well. So we're having a council retreat on November 10th, and more details about that will be revealed on November 10th. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is since July 1st, when council appointed me city manager, the superintendent, Scott, and I have met every 2 weeks to build our relationship and find those areas where we might be able to collaborate, where we may have intersection. And so I think that relationship between the leadership of the city and Lynchburg City Schools is doing nothing but getting stronger. And lastly, before Scott comes up, he and I just had a little tiny sidebar conversation, and we would like to talk more about this idea of a task force of the city school leadership meeting in December. I think it's either late November or early December, and see what we can, how we can talk through that. Any questions? Okay. Thanks, Scott.
I just want you to know that our collaboration with the city has been ongoing from the first days I arrived here. I felt like Kim Payne was ready to develop a deep relationship with the school system for success, and Bonnie is stepping in and taking it even deeper, and so I'm very excited about all the things we're doing. One thing I'm particularly excited about was the summer, when kids really are out of school. And late last year, we coordinated with Jenny Jones, Raul Diaz in the police department, and Parks and Rec, and our school system, and we did a summer basketball league. The truth is, the schools themselves were only a bit player, but what we did is we opened up, we had a flyer that could go to every single kid in middle and high school. We had over 200 kids involved in a basketball summer league. That league's gone on for years, but the turnout was extraordinary because we partnered together. I'm also very excited the Lynchburg Police Department, we've continued to partner there. As you know, we have a criminal justice course. We signed an MOU 2 years ago with the police department, and we re-signed it under Chief Diaz to do more together, to do joint training together. We did joint training with our principals and the SROs and police department senior staff on ways that we can better work together to enhance safety and security in the schools. So I am continually amazed about the different things that we're able to do with the city, and I think you'll see more examples continuing to come. I do want to say just again, personally, Anthony Beckles, thank you. From the first months here, we talked about greater collaboration and consolidation around operational aspects of the city and school system. And we now have a one plan for the city and the schools around health, dental, and pharmacy and vision. And I think that's very powerful and really can help us leverage the marketplace in ways that we never did before. So, thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I am pleased to hear what I just heard, and we've been doing a good job ongoingly. My comments will be very brief. In preparing for this meeting, I wanted to look into how other cities are dealing with their critical factors and how they were identifying them. And most of the cities are suggesting that education is a major or moderate problem. And many of them are recognizing unless there is a partnership between the city council and the school board, that problem really never goes away. And so I'm wanting to suggest that we take strong action around what Vice Mayor Tweedy suggested. I noticed that in Martinsville, Virginia, that they decided, and I certainly don't suggest we spend any more money on consultants, but that someone who is sharp in strategic planning and bringing entities together was introduced, and there was a one-day retreat. I first of all want to commend the planners of this meeting. I thought the agenda was outstanding. I'm just partial that I think we can get much, much more done for the citizens of our beloved city if those of us around this table find ways to spend more time together talking about the real hard issues that we face and not to try to make them smell good when they don't. So they had a one-day retreat between the city council and the school board because you can't talk in 2 hours. The goal of the retreat was to improve communication and foster teamwork, how education and the community needs were interrelated, and to identify ways in which the city council and school board could improve their working relationship, the challenges that they faced. Each group was able to properly understand each other's responsibility around policy, budget, salaries, and other matters as they were identified. And after the retreat, a brief report was prepared with a summary of the improved areas in which collaboration could bring that group to a greater peace. Nothing is always perfect, but Martinsville, Virginia benefited from that, and I think that is what it is needed. Out of that, an education summit in Akron, Ohio may well be what the Vice Mayor is suggesting. The persons come together to deal with strategies to improve student performance and close the achievement gap, and to have teacher preparation and professional development. I applaud everything we said tonight, but it ain't working. And I think the superintendent did a good job of explaining some of the basics of that. So, that education summit is a good thing that is happening. And we have an equity task force, but of course it will take much more than that. Working together, persons are pledging, like in the city of Boston, that within 5 years, they are pledging to commit resources to put in place around the key issues that are identified out of a city council, school board retreat, education summit, and dealing with it. In Denver, Colorado, where we're getting ready to go for our National School Board Association, those two groups, the school board and the city council, launched an effort to provide after-school program for the middle school students. If the hope is beginning to wane as we get to middle and 9th grade is dropping off completely, they've developed Club Denvers around career opportunities where clubs are formed at the middle school level with career paths. And the city agencies, they want to deal with aviation, like Mr. Beckel's sons. There's a partnering with the city's resources to help them at that age and to begin to give them the kind of support that they need. Winding down. And cities and school boards are buying buildings together. And I applaud Councilman Perro. Of course, we didn't buy a building as such, but using the buildings wherein we're able to share them at schools during the day, community centers during the afternoon and weekends, with technology available for kids and parents to get better. To make the hard challenges that we need, those challenges being made, addressed, and meeting those challenges around urban education, reaching out to those colleges locally. Liberty, just we seem to get a lot of folk from Liberty, Lynchburg College or whatever, we need to ensure that an urban education piece is being done. And we don't have to necessarily wait 20 years to do that. And then lastly, to be positive. Madam Mayor, Mr. Chair, I will not rest. I'm deeply honored to serve on this school board, and I'm thankful for the opportunity. I will not rest until the collective strength of those of us around this table really comes together. Find out what we need to do. Our community is tired of talk, but you got to talk to have something to talk about. Do what we need to do to parlay our resources, people, minds, and action items, like many other bold cities across this country. And I would be so honored to be a part of that.
Dr. Coleman, other comments?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. A question going back to your presentation, Dr. Ray Brown. Last year, you presented a very disturbing finding regarding racial achievement, specifically that economically disadvantaged white students perform better than non-economically disadvantaged black students. I hadn't heard that stat or that presented in such a way. I understand the Empowerment Academy was one of the steps taken to bridge that gap. You've gone to Roanoke, you've talked to Roanoke, Martinsville, I believe, which showed that they had better results than we did, even with worse poverty numbers, I believe. I'm pulling that off the top of my head. What's happened in the past year besides the Empowerment Academy? Or what steps have you taken to help bridge that, and where are we going?
Right. We've done additional professional development with teachers around building relationships with kids. That's part of what we've got to do if we're going to hit that data point. The reality is, too, that we've taken a deeper dive with that data, and that data is more prevalent in some schools than some other schools. So it's targeting, working with the school leadership at those specific schools, and saying and acknowledging we have an issue and what are we going to do about it. The training, the awareness that the indicator is being tracked. One of the things that I don't know that I said tonight, and I don't know that I said it last year, we are now giving this data, we're giving it school specific, and we're giving it to every school every quarter of the school year. They're getting real-time data. Now, in SOLs, it's at the end of the year. But other data that can be tracked by quarter, we are giving them by quarter. In fact, Dr. Bruce just delivered their first quarter data. The first quarter ended, a little over a week ago, and they have that data in front of them. So there's no waiting the whole year till we get to this meeting for schools to go, wow, we're doing better. We're not doing better. We're about to do our fall benchmarks that replicate sort of a mini SOL in all of our SOL tested subjects. And there's a 2 or 3 week window for which teachers can administer that benchmark. They then will get those results almost instantaneously to see how their kids are doing. So we've picked up the pace of giving data feedback to schools. We're making it more school specific, and we're doing additional professional development around those issues because it comes down to teacher expectations. We have good teachers, and our teachers are working hard. Many of our teachers need additional training to be sure they can reach every kid. And as I did say before, the training that they had a decade or even 2 decades ago was focused on a middle class kid. And that's just, we've got to be able to have teachers that can teach at all levels of kids. And we have all levels of kids at our school. So I think that continued training and the continued focus on data are 2 things that are going to help drive us toward more.
We really have to move that bar. I think Vice Mayor Tweedy is exactly right. And to Mrs. Poor's comment earlier, I thought, I remember asking that a similar question, and it may have been 2 years ago at this point. If this was going to be a 12-year process, meaning you're starting out with the kindergartners and you're gradually accelerating on, and I'm just worried that we'll leave the middle school kids and high school kids behind. So I know you're focusing on them, but my other question is, thank you for telling me that you're targeting specific schools. So do the administrators of those schools, are they empowered to do what they need to do to make the corrective changes?
Yes, they are.
And you're holding them accountable to it as best you can?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. One final question, and this is about metrics, and I don't know if you can answer this question off the top of your head or not, but I was struck by the correlation between behavior between black students and economically disadvantaged students.
Right.
And I was wondering what the percentage of economically disadvantaged students are black versus what is the percentage of all the students that are black? Do we know that?
I don't know if now, Dr. Bruce, get me, you want to jump in?
The last time we checked, 88% of the students that are in that economically disadvantaged category are African American students.
Okay. How about all students?
I'm not sure of that one.
Okay. I just thought it was a striking correlation between those two figures. And I know that your staff is looking into that and you're researching data inside of that. And look, I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I think you're taking the right steps. I'd love to see it move faster.
Yeah, we want to, listen, nobody more than, well, I'm sure everybody in here wants it to move faster. Part of my own leadership challenge, and I ask for your help and support, is how to keep your foot on the accelerator without driving people off a cliff or driving people out of schools. We want our folks to feel support, but we also need to know that we have higher expectations, and we need to have higher expectations in the community for what we want our kids to do. So it's that balance, and it's the leadership challenge of finding the right balance at the level of knowing that it's urgent, but not overwhelming, because if it's overwhelming, people become frustrated, they're less willing, and we need to support our teachers. We have an accreditation system at the state. One nugget that I just have to go back to that you heard, the kids don't care about the test. They care about having a relationship with the teacher and someone that cares about them. If they get that, they'll do anything, including pass a test. But the test isn't the driver for kids. And we've got to recognize that. We've been caught up in the test score piece, and I get it, because my evaluation, the school system's evaluation has been around the test. But that kids don't wake up today. Particularly our kids that are struggling kids aren't waking up going, how can I pass that test today? They want someone to care about them, feel a connection, and then they'll start to talk about what they'll do for us. And we need to do that so that they can really be ready to be successful on assessments, but also be ready to go out and have a job and be successful and contribute in society.
Councilmember Helms. With that, I guess it's not going to be talking about test scores, but something even more fundamental, and that's on-time graduation.
Right.
And on your first slide here, you give all the breakdown of on-time graduation.
Mm-hmm.
As a council, every time we appoint folks to the school board, we ask questions about what are you going to do to close the achievement gap. And I think Trinae was bringing that up, as well as Dr. Coleman. I look at these numbers here, the achievement gap is not closed. It's actually doubled. You went from an 8-point swing in 2013, graduation from black to white, 8-point gap, to now to 2016 black to white of a 15-point gap. That doubled in a matter of just a couple of years. So I hope we don't just accelerate and keep on going down this path, because that gap will get even bigger. Let's figure out what has happened the wrong direction over these last 3 years, or last 2 years. That gap has doubled. The achievement gap is what we've asked everybody, I think, when we interview council members. We've asked, what are you going to do to close the achievement gap? And everybody says, man, that's good, we got to do it. The data that was just presented to us just now, that gap doubled. That's unacceptable.
My answer would be, we don't want to close the gap by not seeing other kids have success. It's just the reality that some of the strategies that we've put in place, some of our kids who are not struggling are in the best position to take advantage of those situations. And I want, our mission is every child by name and by need to graduation. Until these are all at 100, I'm not going to rest, and nobody else is in the school system. I don't want to take away success for one group of kids to give success for another. We need to see all groups of kids have success. And the bottom line is, Empowerment Academy is one of the things that we know has helped other systems close that graduation gap. And this year, you just saw it. I got to be honest, even just listening tonight, my heart breaks. I didn't know it until Casey came. 2 kids couldn't make it, right? They didn't, and maybe I'm like, gosh, if I'd really thought ahead, I would have had a limo pick up all 3 kids and deliver them here. But for them to tell their story, right, we got to hear one of the 3 stories. That's a little bit of that same piece we've got here. We've got to make sure every kid gets all those opportunities. And even when we think we're doing everything, there's still the unexpected that happens. And that's part of our challenge. I think Empowerment Academy over time is going to grow. There's 150 kids, I think, roughly at Forest Park Academy in Roanoke City. And the superintendent has frequently called it her ace in the hole for graduation rate and SOL scores. I think it's going to be ours. It's just, we're 3 months into it. I think we're off to a good start. We've got to expand it. And we've got to use, and this is one of the things, Ms. Crabb, who's been a principal in a bigger school, is to go back and go, what's working there in Empowerment Academy, and how do we replicate, even though it's bigger schools, how do we replicate some of the things that are working there back at the base comprehensive schools?
Thank you, Dr. Nellis. I really appreciate the very articulate statement that Dr. Coleman's made in the presentation that Dr. Brabrand and the City Manager Severcek has presented to us tonight. It's very positive to me to see the updated comprehensive plan with new numbers and Empowerment Academy that's actually up and running and apparently doing positive things. I don't want to finish off with a negative, so I think I'll turn the negative into a positive. But yesterday I looked at my notes from this meeting last year, and the things that we've talked about tonight, with the exception of new figures, are exactly what we talked about last year. There were proposals made. I mentioned the 15 elementary schools that have been closed down in the city of Lynchburg in my lifetime, and the need to engage in inner city neighborhoods and families and utilize our resources, our community centers and other assets in conjunction with the school. Councilmember Perro incorporated that into a campaign proposal to have a very specific plan for the Boys and Girls Club and the Darrington Justin Park Community Center. But when we talk about students with learning loss that happens over the summer, I'm very concerned about the learning loss that occurs when we have a meeting one year and then the next year we're bringing ourselves back to the same point we were the year before. We've got to have a plan, as Councilman Vice Mayor Tweedy said, and all of us have alluded to. And until we do have a plan and regular meetings to engage with each other and embrace the entire community, we're going to be talking about this over and over again. And I've attended the community listening tours, I've attended the poverty workshops, the trauma presentation at the IT building last month, which was wonderful, and of course the Equity Task Force. And all of these topics are just variations on the same themes. So we've got to get going. And that's the positive part about tonight. That's not a negative, it's a positive. I think we have a commitment among all of us that we will get going.
Yes, I think I've heard that too, Councilmember Nelson, and collectively, we don't necessarily have to sing Kumbaya together all the time, but I think collectively tonight, we have heard, and you've summarized beautifully, that we are all on the same page. We all agree that we need to move forward and work together to help our children in our school system. And I'm encouraged, and I think it was a positive note. And I don't think we've ended quite yet, because I think there are a couple more hands up.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to let Dr. Nellis, I promised that he could have the other half since I monopolized the first half of the conversation tonight. So Dr. Nellis, I'll let you wrap it up.
I won't take long. I think that we've talked about a lot of ideas and people to come to the table, but I would like to hear more from the students, from a selection of students, and tell us what is preventing them from doing all they can do, from just the diverse group of students that can share more and give examples of what is holding them back.
Vice Mayor Tweedy.
I just had the question on the promise plan, because I guess like others went back to last year's information. I found the slides at my desk. and I look back at the data, are all departments looking at the work they do through the lens of the Promise Plan? And I just say, like, every process, not just teachers, everyone, and how all of that factors into poverty, achievement, and their programs and processes.
Yes, and you know what, we can bring you an updated Promise Plan information. We haven't even brought it to the board yet, but that came up actually at the Equity Task Force just the other day. And we'll have an update, and I can get that frankly to the board and then make sure the City Council gets it as well.
I think we're ready to wrap up.
Thank you. I just sat in a lengthy meeting earlier this week for one of my children with a group of administrators and teachers to get him some help that he needed. And the very important thing that we ended with is when will we meet again? And that's what I would like to know tonight, is when will we meet again? Because Ms. Tweedy and I sat and talked about this very thing at the end of the meeting last year, when will we meet again? And it was 1 year ago, so
Yeah.
let's put it out there, when will we meet?
I was going to say, we have a joint city school leadership meeting in 3 weeks.
Yeah, November 22nd.
And I think that would be appropriate time to do some planning.
How long is that?
How long?
How much time will we have then? Is it another hour and a half?
No, this is just, it doesn't.
This is just that we would meet and then decide a date. And if we need more time in the hearing that you feel we may need more than an hour and a half, that we should block off maybe 3 hours? Or however much it takes. Yes. But duly noted that we may need more time.
And after you all talk about it, because I have full confidence in the leadership group, then we can move beyond very capable people looking back to see that we said we were going to do things and then do not do them for whatever reason. And whatever language we're going to use, myself focus on what I say. It's not about win, lose, or lose, win. It's about win-win. We have to make sure that we don't give the impression that we're so concerned about protecting one group that we are not prepared to have our collective will, with all of our intelligence and ability, to do what we need to change these figures so that every student can be what they need by name and need. I'm very concerned about that because there's an undertone to that that suggests that there are some behind-the-scenes blockages towards us being able to be what we need to be.